Okay, perfect. All right.
I'm
Well,
gonna keep my mic muted for a while because like I said, I'm driving, so I'm gonna just mute it until I talk.
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me. Okay, so we're working on lesson 7 this week. But before we start, can we have someone do an opening prayer?
Yeah, I can say it.
Yay, thanks.
You bet. Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this day, for this opportunity we have to meet as a group for human resources. We're grateful for this past weekend that we were able to enjoy and celebrate Memorial Day. And we're thankful for all those who have fought and died for this country and for the freedoms that we're able to enjoy. We ask that you please bless us today to learn from one another and apply what we learn in our daily lives and become better people because of it. We're grateful for all that was done for us, and we ask you for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Perfect. Okay, so this week we were discussing the pilot program for the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago's mentoring program that they did. Part 1 for today's lesson says we want to talk about the successes of the pilot program. And so can we possibly like make a list of the positive results of the pilot program? So yeah, it says there are lots of examples of some of the positive results that came from the pilot program. I have
well, I know here, like, I didn't read the whole entire thing. Shame on me, right? But the pilot program, wasn't that just to get more mentors to that bank, right? To like have like a mentor program for the bank.
Yeah, and it kind of sounds like they set up a pretty structured mentor program.
Okay, and then like from what I read, like the first go around, it was kind of successful, right? But then they didn't have that much of a turnover on the second go around or something like that. Like not as many people signed up or something like that. Is that right?
That is correct. They had, for the first round, they had a good momentum to kind of start it on the right foot. And I think kind of mentoring them to kind of prepare them for better jobs within the company, but also to kind of help with retention and morale, to kind of teach people kind of inner workings of the establishment and also what they offer, I think.
Yeah. So I guess, I don't know, where do we go from there? I guess now that I'm brought back up to speed.
So it says here that some of the positive results of the program were employees feel a more loyalty to the bank, employees who are thinking of leaving the company who realize that there are opportunities for them within the company, the mentees feeling more sense of a network within the bank, mentors and mentees seeing the value of additional education, a large number of mentees being promoted. So another question that they want me to ask is the reasons for this positive results in the program, to list the reasons for the positive results. So why did they have the positive results that they had in the program?
I think it had to do with the fact that the people actually felt like they were working for something and not just for a paycheck. There was some buy-in with regards to like their job. They all felt like they were part of something bigger, is what I feel like. And I thought about how the doohickeys company, I mean, on a side note, the doohickeys company needs to have this program.
Yeah, I think that's an understatement. They should roll this out like yesterday for the doohickeys company. That place has got some stuff going on there.
Totally. I also liked how it talked about how it's kind of like an informal support group. So it adds a lot of resources for people who are in their same boat to kind of get through together, which I would imagine helps with turnover because you don't feel so alone, and you can also help people find like either the answers to problems you've recently encountered, or you like can kind of say, oh, I had that problem, here's the resource I went through. So I thought that was a cool part of it.
I agree. I wrote that one down as well as the leader of the pilot program helped to develop a resource library, and then had such great support from the senior management team as well.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that the program started doing so well was just because of the team that they had that built the program for for the bank. I was reading on part A, when you go down the list, it kind of gives you all the team members and their experience and what they had to contribute. And I thought that a big part of how successful the program was.
Yeah, I think so too. Are you jumping, Dawn, into what didn't work yet? I can't remember if we were just covering what did.
We're just doing the positives right now.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that another thing was just allowing people to make those connections with people who they normally wouldn't have worked with maybe at this stage in the game, and I think that's huge. I know that has made a difference for me in the past when I felt a close connection with someone who was maybe a lot higher up in the company than I would have normally gotten to deal with.
They felt listened to. Absolutely felt listened to.
Yeah, agreed.
So with all the reasons that we have or that we gave for the success of the pilot program, which would you say was the more important reason?
I would say just the general connectivity of it all, that they were connected to each other and then connected to the company and then connected to their mentors. I think it just really created a cohesive family group, if I had to say.
I agree. I like the system that they worked out and how they kind of made it full circle for everyone involved. I liked how they educated them. They prepared them for it to the best of their ability, as this was the pilot the pilot group. Would you say that this would work just for this bank, or could this work for any other company?
That's what I was just kind of trying to ask. I was going to ask you guys actually, so that's a good question. I was saying, well, how large does a corporation need to be to implement something like this? You know, I mean, there's 50 employees. Is that enough, or is it more like a corporate level type of program?
I personally think you could pair any. I mean, if you've got 7 employees, I think you could probably make a pretty good mentor match. What do you guys think?
I would agree with that.
I agree.
I know that for my company, the salespeople, you're knocking door to door, and a lot of people don't know how and don't know, what to do once you get someone who says yes and whatever. And so we had a ton of turnover. Our employee turnover was almost 50% month to month, which was ridiculous. And so we started implementing a mentorship program where we had an actual incentive for those who are higher up and more successful to help those who were within their first month. and it really helped with our employee retention. I don't know how it did for their actual sales, but I know that people were definitely prone to stay longer than that initial month if they had that help. So I think it for sure can be applied to a lot of different companies and structures.
I agree. We've had we've kind of touched base on this already, but how can mentoring help employees with career development? And Danny was already kind of telling us how they've implemented it at her place of business, but does anybody else have any examples of how it can help?
Well, I just think, or go ahead, Don or John.
Well, I was just going to say that I feel like it's good when you have like a mentorship program. I think some people that are like subordinate, they don't have any idea of what they're capable of. And sometimes they just need somebody to put their arm around them and help them feel important, and even give them some aspirations about, hey, I like this. Plus, it helps on the recommendation side. If I'm mentoring somebody and they're good at what they're doing and I can see them being good at it, it makes it easy for me to recommend them for certain positions.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just going to add to that, especially like companies, I feel like they have really good internship programs, like Danny was saying, that bring people in and make them feel and let them know, okay, these are what the opportunities are for you if you continue on this company, and the more information somebody has, and the more they feel like the company appreciates their presence, their work. Probably the more likely they're going to be to stay there and progress up and up and up through the company.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that internship is really a good example. We've kind of touched on those before. My husband, they paired him up with a mentor when he started his job. And I think it was somebody who had been with the company for like 5 years, which is really hard because they work a lot of hours. And this mentor had 2 small children. And so he invited my husband to go to like a lot of personal things, like go play basketball. It was very much a relationship outside the workplace. And it was really neat because my husband felt like he could start a family in this career because he got some tips from this guy who had done it. So I think it really helped him, not even just from a professional standpoint, I think from a personal one as well. So I think they can have a lot of applicability.
Yeah. Well, not only that, I feel like as a mentor, I mean, that's a very satisfying thing as well, to be in that position and be like that helping hand for somebody else who's trying to climb the ladder or trying to figure out what they want to do. And so it's kind of a two-way street really too.
Oh, I'm sure people always want to give advice, and now here's someone who has to listen.
Yeah.
So true. We have so many positive points for mentoring, but here's kind of the devil's advocate. Would you say there are any obstacles or downsides to mentoring?
I think that if you get the wrong person to be a mentor, to like what Tyson was saying, they could really screw up the entire culture of the company. And sometimes you get this whole like buddy thing going on, and they can overlook what's really going on with the intern or the person they're supposed to be training. So there are some downsides to it. I've seen it happen. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, for sure. If you get those people who like don't know how to teach, which is one of the things I think that's cool we're learning at BYU Idaho, is in every class that's part of our learning is teaching. And I think that's a really important skill to have that not everybody has, like you mentioned. And you've got people who will cut corners or generally have a bad attitude about the company, and those are probably not people you want to be mentoring. And then also, I think the part A in this study kind of talked about how some of the leadership was a little bit unwilling to help out, and that could definitely be a problem if you don't have the support from those who are supposed to be the mentors.
Very true.
That's very, very true. I'm going to skip ahead to part 3 now, and we're going to analyze the program. Would a less formal mentoring program be even better, where mentees are free to find whatever mentor they need help from? Would it help them in their progress a little bit better, maybe?
I think I kind of like both the ideas, because I like the idea of having just someone assigned to you who's been selected as someone who would be a good mentor. But I also think that every person is so different. And I know there's people in my company that I would love to learn just like a specific task from. And it would be cool to be able to reach out to them. So I wonder if you could almost kind of make like a hybrid opportunity. I think that would probably be my ideal setup.
I kind of think that should be the case as well. But I think that in order for somebody to pick their mentor, that we need to have some criteria, like the mentor needs to meet these certain criteria, because you don't want them picking somebody who's terrible at their job or might be on a corrective action and they don't know it or something along those lines. I think I think it would be awesome to be able to pick their mentor as long as it met they identified with the criteria that was set out by the company.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point.
Yeah, you did hit on the key points that I was gonna say too. Was as long as the matching process or the criteria, like you said, as long as they had some steps to follow before they just threw anyone in there, because anyone can be a mentor, right?
Yeah. Well, if I remember right, in this program that they kind of piloted, wasn't there some criteria in there where they wouldn't allow, they have to have like 2 salary gaps between the mentor and the mentee, so there wouldn't be like too close to, I don't know how you even say that, but I guess they wouldn't be at the same level. They wanted someone in the upper level to mentor someone in the lower level. So I mean, I kind of agree with you guys, what you're saying. Maybe something like a hybrid where you could be like, okay, well, if you want to select your own mentor, here's a list of mentors you can select. But if you'd like us to select one for you, we have that option too. So whatever, because everyone's different. There's no one size fits all with a program.
Yeah, and I think too, like I wouldn't know when I started a job who to select for a mentor, so I kind of like the idea of selecting a mentor, and then maybe you get to select one from an approved list or whatever at 6 months or a year, because I think at different stages in your career, it could be cool to have a program like this that helped you accelerate into new opportunities or develop skills that you're not learning in your job on a day-to-day. So maybe having these kind of checkpoints, because if it increases retention at the very beginning, there's a very good likelihood that it could increase the retention at 6 months or a year or whatever. And I think it's maybe worth looking into.
Yeah, I think that's great, because I mean, there's a lot of ambitious people out there who start a job per se, and they want to climb the ladder the best way they can. They just don't know how. So they maybe start looking for other opportunities with different companies. And so that'd be a smart thing to do for any large company, is to have a program like this, so they can keep all that time and money that they've spent trying to train this person, keep them in their company and benefit from them more.
I like that as well. Something about, or kind of like Danny was saying, about she has some mentors that she would like to pick on her own, that she has some people in mind. Kind of going towards that, why would a company want to create a formal mentoring program rather than allow mentoring relationships to form more naturally?
I think that goes back to what John said. There's definitely people that are more suitable for it that a young employee might not know, but the company would definitely know. And they can kind of steer you in a direction that is going to be more helpful than harmful.
And I think you can align certain behaviors of good mentors. Like if you know somebody is struggling with a certain behavior, and you know that somebody is really proficient at a certain behavior that would be their mentor, you can put those people together, and because it obviously solidifies. It's kind of like bearing your testimony. The more you bear your testimony, the stronger your testimony gets. So for the mentor, they get stronger at it, and then they can actually strengthen the other person who might be weak. So from a company perspective, it makes sense to align the people up accordingly to what your company needs are.
Excellent point. So with all that being said, what might have been improved in the, wait, that doesn't even make any sense. Sorry, let me try it again. What could have been improved in the Federal Reserve BAKE program? So what might have been improved because of this? I think we kind of hit the points: retention and people feeling more comfortable in their positions. It brought them closer. Anyone else?
I do have a question. So it said the second round wasn't as successful. And from what I gathered, is it because so many people signed up for the first round that they weren't necessarily that many around to do the second round? Is that why it wasn't as successful, or do we not know?
I don't think we know completely, but they also kind of went by word of mouth. The marketing wasn't there like it was the first time. I think they kind of pulled back a little bit on the kind of going out to get people, maybe.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a good way to do it, with the word of mouth, and then having just like X amount of spots so that your good mentors don't get overwhelmed and you can kind of cycle through them. So that's probably a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so since Danny already asked, why do we think less people signed up? We can go with what could the company have done to get more applicants?
I think you can offer an incentive. You can maybe do an incentive program, like if you become a mentor, you get a little bit of an incentive, or if you go through or if you're the mentee, then you can get an incentive if you make it through the program.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, well, the way we did it, I think you had to, as a mentor, as a mentee, you had to go through it and you like checked all these different things off. It was kind of like an onboarding process where like you did things until like you hit your 3 months. And then as a mentor, they also had like a leadership program where if you wanted to eventually get into leadership, one of the requirements is that you had to have been a mentor to people. And I think that might be a good way to incentivize leadership growth as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, actually.
I do as well. So they kind of kept the group small during this pilot, but do you think a larger group could work? Or would it just kind of water it down?
I think it's all in the way you manage it. I mean, with anything, if it all depends on like the overhead you want to have for the mentor program. You know, how many, sets of leaders you want to be overseeing the mentors and getting some kind of like a report from them. If you have if you have a good enough system set in place where you can manage, twice or 3 times as many people, I could see it working. It'd probably be a little bit more difficult, maybe not as efficient, but it could probably work.
I always think of the way like a mission is set up with like zone leaders and district leaders, which is funny because our company was started by a bunch of return missionaries, so it's kind of the same way in the way we operate. But have you ever been to like a branch? It's like in the boonies, and they like are kind of off kilter just because they've been left alone for so long. And I think that could definitely be the case with programs like this. If you grow it too large, it's just like you just mentioned, Tyson, like it can get out of control, or people could be like teaching some weird things. And so I think you definitely want to scale it so that you get most of your like incoming. If you're going to target your incoming people, I think you'd want to scale it so that you're getting most of them within an appropriate time frame of them starting. But if, let's say, that is a really big group and it's maybe a little bit hard to manage, I think having almost like visiting and home teaching like supervisor coordinators that call and check in and make sure you're doing, and maybe having some training for the mentors so that they know what they're supposed to be teaching instead of just like teaching whatever it is they want. I think the church definitely has some really good systems set in place for like managing small groups cohesively. And I think maybe mirroring some of those things where you can implement smaller groups on a large scale could help that problem.
I agree. I was gonna, for me, I was thinking that the smaller group kind of worked better because it's more intimate. I know it sounds a little weird, but it's like you feel more likely to share, more likely to want to let your guard down if it's not such a big group, because I feel like some can kind of get lost when we do have big groups. Then again, there's more opportunities to kind of break into those subgroups within the group. So it's like you have, a larger group, but we can break them into different compartments as well. So it can be, there's ways to make it smaller even though you have a large turnout.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so we have a couple more questions about how we would get enough mentors without forcing them to be involved, because when they get a little higher up or even not so high up, the workload kind of changes and they have a lot more stuff that they're responsible for. So I think being a mentor, even if you're the paperwork was saying how they only had to do like 4 hours a month, where they were combination of it, but these guys sometimes don't have 4 hours that they can give. So how would we be able to get more mentors to, want to jump in and do this program?
I think what Tyson was saying, like, you've got to manage it really, really well for this to work. And I think if you let it get out of control and their workload doesn't change, they're not going to be incentivized because they get nothing out of it, right? The mentors don't. Mm-hmm. And it's just more work on their plate. So I think you almost have to create a program where you go to that person's boss or the resource manager, whoever it is, and say, this person is on mentor duty this month, so we really need to clear some time, and maybe they're on one fewer project. I know this is like easier said than done in theory, but I think it almost has to be that way, where they almost get that reward back on their time. So it's not just like one additional thing they don't have time for.
Right. I mean, it's like, just going along with that, I mean, it all depends on the priority that they put on the program. I mean, the leaders or the mentors, if they're told by, the upper level, the CEO, whoever, that, hey, we need to prioritize this and have higher retention, then they'll make the time. If the bosses give them their permission, they'll make the time and make it happen. It's just kind of like home teaching and visiting teaching, I mean, it all depends on your Elders Quorum president and Research Society president. If they make it a priority and emphasize it a lot, then more people get it done. And so I think it could be somewhat applicable with this pilot program. Is if they make it a priority, then there's definitely a way to get it done and make it a good program for sure.
Yeah, and definitely having like the resources for whatever it is they're doing, rather than, hey, you've got to pilot or you've got to mentor somebody and figure out a way to do it. But by giving them some resources, so that, again, it's just less work put on them.
I agree. Some of the good takeaways from this program is that they did kind of do the initial training. Not only did they do the matching so thoroughly, they set them up kind of to positively, I guess. They trained them so they can know what was expected of them, so they can know what they needed to do in the program, because it was so new and no one knew how it was going to play out. So we kind of went over already our suggestions on how we can get enough people to mentor, and I liked all of you guys' suggestions on removing some of the workload and try to put a positive spin on it, so it's they have an initiatives, incentives, to want to do this program, so it's not just another burden to them. I know that we have let's see. So getting the mentors, how do we get the people who need the mentoring to jump in? I know that when you're kind of sick of the job and you're thinking that you want to go on anyway, you don't want to, you're thinking about going to a different position, how would you persuade someone who's not really wanting to stay to take the chance and get a mentor?
I think by making it, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say real quick, I mean, information is key in that aspect, right? I mean, you don't know what you don't know. So if you're thinking about leaving, for example, you know, and you have a mentor come up to you and say, hey, you know what, these are the opportunities that you have, and we can get you there. If you're willing, you know, we can, you know, this is what your future could look like here. You could do that monetary wise or just like job skill wise or responsibility, and let them make a more informed decision that way.
I think that's totally a good thing to mention, like creating an atmosphere where they could tell their mentor, like, hey, I'm thinking about doing something else, and having it be like confidential, that they could help them out, because that's a huge deal. I know that my husband, when he was, usually people don't stay in investment banking for very long because the hours are crazy, and so he had talked to his mentor and said, hey, you've stuck it out longer than most people, so why have you done that? Because I'm thinking about leaving, and here's the reasons why. And he was able to talk it out and have a conversation, which usually something like that isn't very kosher to have at work. But I think it really helps. Like you said, people might stay, but because they're able to have some open conversations, and maybe that's all it takes, is they're not moving or growing as fast as they want. And if you can have someone who can, you know, pull some of those strings to make some of those opportunities happen, it might really make a difference.
Yep, I agree.
I agree too. Those are kind of hitting all the good points on here. Let's see. Does anybody else have any questions about the reading this week, or?
No?
I think I did. This one was pretty straightforward.
Yep.
It really was. Easily enough. Thank you. Gosh, I was like, don't be hard.
Yeah, no, this one was a good one. You did a really good job.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know we want to take a couple minutes to talk about the doohickey project, or
Yeah.
For sure.
so I can end our time now, and then we can continue with that.
Okay.
I appreciate it. I think you did a great job, Don. I just want to apologize for not having the paper single spaced, guys. That's my fault. So I'll take full
Oh, I
responsibility.
didn't even notice. You're good.
So my question is, do you guys want me to just